Let's talk about prior authorizations. So the last year that we have definitive figure for is 2022, and there were 46 million prior authorizations requested from Medicare Advantage companies. So we're talking about Medicare here. We're not talking about original Medicare, because original Medicare, if you just have Part A and Part B with a Medicare supplement, one of those Plan N or Plan G or Plan F or whatever 10 of those letters you have, most are N, G, or F, then you don't have to worry about prior authorizations. See ya, bye, have a nice day. Because how Medicare, original Medicare does it is they go ahead and approve it if your doctor says you need it and it's covered by Medicare. It has to be medically necessary. I can't go in there and get a hair transplant because that's not medically necessary. We should change the law. But anyway, if it's medically necessary, it's covered by Medicare, then you don't need a prior authorization. Doctor says, we need it. We need this operation. We need this MRI. We need this CAT scan. We need whatever. You're done. You're approved. No issues whatsoever. Medicare Advantage, if you have a Medicare Advantage company, your doctor has to ask the insurance bureaucrats whether they can give you an MRI or a CAT scan or do this surgery or this procedure or whatever. And then the Medicare Advantage company, we'll talk about the details how this happens, they will approve it or deny it or delay it, and then deny it or delay it and approve it, and whatever the case may be. So original Medicare does not have prior authorizations. The philosophy, so a lot of other companies, probably your employer health plan or something like that, they might not have prior authorizations. Again, Medicare doesn't. How do they do it? They just go ahead and approve it. And if it turns out there's some bad actors out there, doctors that are prescribing things that are not medically necessary, hospitals doing surgeries that are not medically necessary, or whatever the case may be, to fraud the system, then Medicare goes after those people and judgments and lawsuits and throws them in jail. And I'm sure you see all the time about some clinic or hospital or doctors thrown in jail for Medicare fraud. And there's more out there, but Medicare, being a small agency and budgeting is getting smaller and smaller, they need our help. So if you see anything that looks suspicious, please report it to CMS. And that way, we're saving our tax dollars, all that money we paid into FICA. But Medicare Advantage, they have a separate operating procedure. They just don't approve it automatically like original Medicare. Some things they do, but there's a lot of categories depending on your Medicare Advantage companies. They all operate a little bit differently. Some will automatically approve an MRI for this particular diagnosis. Others, you'll have to go through a prior authorization, and that changes every year. So some companies are good and some companies are not so good, and it really depends. There was a company a few years ago that was using a computer algorithm to deny people. And how it's supposed to happen is your doctor says you need this, and it's supposed to go to the insurance company, and an actual medical person needs to look at it and approve it or to deny it or ask for more information, whatever the case may be. And that doesn't always happen that way. This company got in big trouble for just programming some computer to use an algorithm to deny people. In 2022, 7.4% of prior authorizations were fully or partially denied. So that's going up. In 2019, it was about 5.7%. 2020 is 5.8%. So again, the last year, 7.4% in 2022, 2023. If the trend continues, it will go up. Hopefully it's not going up this year, but we shall see. So if we're looking at about 10% of possibly denials. And here's something I want everybody out there that has been denied. So if you, your family member, loved one is denied a particular procedure that your doctor thinks you need, then you need to appeal it. Only 9.9% of denials were appealed. So that's what obviously the health insurance companies, they do this to, save money, more profits, give their shareholders more profits, give their CEO a nice new yacht. And they use some of that money to, put nice little bells and whistles into these Medicare Advantage plans. So you're like, oh, free gym membership. Okay, well, where'd the money come for this free gym membership? It came from prior authorization denials. So they make those profits, and they are able to add nice little cute little bells and whistles into these plans. So we don't necessarily want gym membership is fine, but we would rather have our medical decisions, kept between our doctors, and if we need it, we like to get approved. So less that and more, taking care of our health. But here's the key: 83.2% of appeals were overturned. But the problem is, again, only less than 10% of people actually appeal. So if you are denied, your prior authorization was denied, then please appeal, because 83.2% of those appeals were eventually overturned. So fight it. Get with your doctor. Each company has a different appeal process. So you just say, okay, once you get the denial, it should have on there what the appeal process is, whatever Medicare Advantage plan you have. They're hoping you don't appeal it, or they're hoping you just kind of give up, or you just say forget about it. I'll go to another company when the annual enrollment period starts. I'll just go to another company and I'll see. Or if it's a delay to the next year, and then your deductibles all start again, and so another way for companies to make more money. So But there's good news. I've got some good news and I've got some bad news on this front. The good news is CMS, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, has come out with a new rule. And the new rule kind of changes all this for the better. It's not perfect, but it's definitely a nice start. So the new rule, according to CMS, is they cannot provide less coverage than original Medicare, because when you sign up for Medicare Advantage, you're essentially giving up Medicare. You now have to go through the Medicare Advantage company you choose. You still have to pay for Part B premium, obviously. You still have Part A, but you can't go directly through Medicare. You have to go through your company. So people with Medicare supplement, they just, is it approved? Is it a necessary, medically necessary? Yes. Medicare covers it. Yes. If it's 80%, then Medicare pays the 20%. If you have a Medicare supplement, they can't say anything. If Medicare pays their 80%, your Medicare supplement company has to cough up the other 20%, or whatever if it's a hospital, they have to pay the deductible, whatever the case may be. They have no say in it whatsoever. If Medicare says, yes, pay it, then that company has to pay it. No ifs, ands, or buts. But Medicare Advantage is supposed to cover the same type of things as original Medicare, but often, they kind of work around the edges a little bit in order to make, more profits for their shareholders. And they're doing very, very well, making billions of dollars. And the delays, CMS has made a big decision on the delays. So the response time up until this is only going to start 2026, unfortunately. So from 14 days to 7 days starting 2026. And for urgent requests, 72 hours. So a decision has to be made of an approval or denial or whatever the case may be within 72 hours if it's an urgent request for a prior authorization. If it's not an urgent, then they have to have it done by 7 days. And another part of this is they have to publicly report their stats. And this one looks like it's going to be delayed until 2027, because the health insurance companies complain that, okay, we're going to have to build a new computer system to, monitor all this information and then pass it on to CMS and all the rest of it. So they, finagle themselves another delay. And this way, with the statistics being reported to CMS can therefore, figure out, hey, this particular company is not doing the right thing, and let's monitor them a little bit closer. That's all. This is the good news. The bad news is, remember, these are new rules. These are new rules by CMS, a bureaucratic agency. And remember, several weeks ago, the Supreme Court came down and they overturned Chevron deference, which basically says, no, these bureaucratic agencies cannot reinterpret the law like this. So basically, CMS, up until this, for the past 40 plus years, CMS, Social Security, all these different agencies, the Food and Drug Administration, they were able to take congressional laws and say, okay, Congress, you didn't really, Congress sucks at writing laws. We all know that. Very, very vague laws. And they leave it to the particular agencies to interpret the fine details. So in this type of thing, Congress wrote a law about Medicare Advantage, and then they're supposed to provide this, and they can do prior authorizations, but CMS has now come down and kind of tweaked it a little bit to improve it. But now the Supreme Court says they can't do that. Well, they can until they're sued. So here's what I think is going to be happening soon, because these health insurance companies don't like these new rules. They want to be able to, rule their own world and make the decisions for us. So I keep looking for a lawsuit, and it hasn't come yet, because these rules are relatively new. So I am looking for probably a lawsuit, usually in Texas. They find a sympathetic judge somewhere in the country, and they go there and they say, oh, these rules, the CMS has no authority to make these rules, and all of this might be completely wiped out, and they might have to go back to 14 days or 21 days for authorizations. So I'm going to keep an eye on that. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but this is cutting into the profit margin of these companies. So I'm pretty sure it's going to happen. What will have to happen then is we'll have to demand our politicians to actually make a law, not a bureaucratic rule, a law that says these companies have to do X, Y, and Z, and they have to write it in super detail. Yeah, and our politicians, what, $400 million last year by the pharmaceutical industry for lobbying. So that's going to be, so anyway, I hate to get off on a negative note there, but temporarily it is a good thing on prior authorizations. But whether the law changes or not, then make sure you definitely appeal those. Okay, let's go ahead and get into your question. DJ, when doctors make a request to Medicare for a PA, are there regulations of how long Medicare can take to make a decision? Request to Medicare. Make a request to Medicare. No, for a request to Medicare, they don't have to make a request to Medicare. You probably mean a request to your Medicare Advantage company, your private company. And those are the ones I just talked about, 14 days. But now it's supposed to go down to 7 days or 72 hours if it's an emergency. So yeah, if you're talking about original Medicare, there is no prior authorization. I have an appointment with one of your advisors today, and I can't wait to talk to him. Thank you for the education, all your work. All right, perfect. Yes. Because there's so many bad actors and so many fronts out there. It's the old Marine Corps, can't get things done, just do it yourself. So I put together a team that helps people with Medicare, and I'm getting lots of messages and calls and emails because next year there's going to be a lot of changes with Medicare, not only prior authorizations, but because of all that, a lot of Medicare Advantage companies are leaving particular areas. There's new regulations and the Part D program. So Medicare Advantage companies are cutting back on a lot of their extra benefits. They are increasing cost sharing for doctors and MRIs and CAT scans. They are pulling out of whole areas, the Southeast, Florida, Missouri, other places. I see in the news continuously companies say, yeah, we're not making enough money here. If you're in a rural area, country area, desert area, not a large population, you're going to get a letter next month, and make sure you read it, because there's going to be a lot of changes. And if you need help, I'm getting a lot of people requesting help, and so we're getting focused on that. And you can click on that, and we can compare what you got with what is available out there. And if you're in the best thing, you don't have to do anything. You just stay where you're at. But if my team can find you something better, they will let you know. DL, I only have Medicare Part A. I need minor surgery and was told I needed prior authorization from a doctor, but A doesn't pay the doctor visit. I'm going to the emergency room for that. Yes, that is correct. It's strange. Medicare Part A pays for the hospitalization, but what they do in the hospital is done by the doctor. So that's paid for Part B. So people think all the time, so if I'm going to the hospital to get an operation, I don't need Part B because it's in the hospital. No, no, no. Part A covers the hospital bill and, overnight, and there's a $1,632 deductible for that. But the actual surgery and anesthesiologist and all that kind of stuff is paid for by Part B, and it only covers 80%. So you have to pay out of pocket the other 20%. That's why people get a Medicare supplement plan or they get a Medicare Advantage plan. I always recommend Medicare supplement plan if you can fit it within your budget. That way you don't have the prior authorizations and networks. But unfortunately, a lot of people can't fit it within their budget, so they go to a Medicare Advantage, which is okay as long as you keep up on it. You have to keep up on it every year. It's easier as you get older, your education background, and other things, other type of side effects of the medication or other smaller issues that might not be disabilities on their own, but so file. All they can do is say no, and then you request an appeal. Always request the appeal, even on these prior authorizations. Please, let's hold these companies accountable, because remember, these companies, these Medicare Advantage companies, this isn't their money that they're hoarding. This is our money. All the money you paid into FICA. So FICA is 6.2% goes into Medicare, 1.45% goes into, 6.2% goes into Social Security, and 1.45 goes into Medicare. And then your employer pays matching. So that money that you paid into FICA Medicare for decades, that money is sitting in Washington somewhere. And when you sign up for XYZ Medicare Advantage company, that company takes their little cup and they go to Washington and they say, hey, give us this person's money. And Medicare gives them a certain amount of money every year to take care of your health. So that's your money. That is your money. So these companies aren't doing you any favors. They're just holding your money and they're being stingy with it. So get your money back. And the way to do it is hold them accountable and check your plan, review your plan on a regular basis, because you might like your XYZ Medicare Advantage company. You've had it for 2 or 3 years, but those contracts are only good for 1 year. So you've only had your plan for 8 months. Last year's plan was different. You might have the same card, the same company name, the same doctor, the same zero premium, but it changes every year, and they change stuff that you don't necessarily notice until it's too late. They change the stuff under the hood. The last year it might have been $100 if you go to the hospital. This year $200. Next year it might be $300. MRI $20, $30, $400 next year. You don't know. So that's why it's important to review your plans every year. And companies, they don't want you to review your plans every year because they want you to keep on the old plans so they can come out with the new plans, because these companies have multiple plans in the same area. So your company probably has 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different models in your area. So you've got the old 1972 Pinto version, and they just came out with the new, Corvette, and they don't want you to switch to the Corvette. Same price, same savings, more savings, because they want your money. So that's the strategy. So let's beat them at their own strategy.